A weekly pulse on all things green and gold this football season, just over 24 hours away from kickoff for the Green Bay Packers down in Sao Paulo, Brazil, taking on the Philadelphia Eagles in week one. I'm Alex Strouf. That is the three-time Wisconsin Sportswriter of the Year, Jason Wilde, on episode 2, week 1 of his favorite show he's ever done, Weekly Wilde. Hello, Jason.
I can't wait till we add yes or no from our pregame work on Green Bay game day to this show. Then I'll really love it. I asked you one thing. I don't know how many other people have been as supportive of them. I
Here we
asked
go
you for
again.
one thing.
Yeah.
A new name for the show. Nothing. Weekly Wildy, week 2. No, come on. Come on.
I can't wait till we get to week 10. Weekly Wilde, week 10. It's
It
going to
will
get
not
ridiculous.
it will not be Weekly Wildy by week 10. Or I
Oh, it will
will
be.
not be here. No, I'm not coming then.
He's protesting after 2 episodes. We're off to a hot start. All right, let's dive in, Jason. The NFL season officially here. The Chiefs and Ravens kick things off tonight ahead of the Packers and the Eagles tomorrow in Brazil. Both teams landing safely in Brazil yesterday afternoon. Now, this has been quite the, I don't want to call it quite a debacle, but it has certainly been quite a situation when it comes to the game being played in Sao Paulo. You see lawmakers saying, don't go to Brazil. You hear Eagles players like Darius Slay saying they've been advised to do nothing outside of their hotel room. What do you make of everything going on in Sao Paulo ahead of the week 1 game between the Packers and the Eagles? Because it feels like an international trip unlike any other.
It is unlike any other. They've never done this before, right? And look, my issue I have against Brazil or Sao Paulo or the good people who live there. What I do have an issue with is the NFL's hypocrisy of expanding their international footprint to a place where they have deemed not safe enough for their players and coaches and personnel to leave the hotel. That's what I have an issue with. Because, as many people have pointed out, Ricky Pearsall was shot during the day in San Francisco, in an area where Paula and I both have been. We love San Francisco. We got engaged there. It's a great American city that has obviously had its issues in recent years. But no one says, I mean, I know they play in Santa Clara now, so it's not the perfect example. But no one says when the team is going to San Francisco, you're not allowed to go to Fisherman's Wharf. You have to stay in your hotel. And for the NFL to be doing this, to me, just signifies that they have chosen a destination for a game that they don't believe is safe enough for their personnel. And I have a problem with that. We've seen on social media, I guess not Twitter from Brazil right now, but there's a lot of Packers fans down there, right? There's a lot of people that are really excited to have their favorite American football team playing in their home country. And I feel bad that that's the narrative about their country, which they are very proud of. At the same time, this was the NFL's choice. They decided to put this game there. They don't put these restrictions on when you go to London, right? And there's issues in London. It's not like London is this utopia. So that's my issue, is that they have chosen a place that they feel so uncomfortable with that they have their players on lockdown until game time.
Is this something that was expected when they announced this game? Because I know there's been, the rumor mill has been swirling since day one, dating back to when we were talking about whether or not these two teams could wear green and everything that goes into Friday's production. But it seems to me that almost the NFL is going, ooh, maybe we didn't do as much research on the front end as we should have. Is that a bad interpretation by me?
I don't think so. I mean, it's really surprising that the NFL would not have all their I's dotted and T's crossed, right? Maybe they knew and they just didn't care about the drawbacks to Sao Paulo, right? The bottom line is they're going to make a ton of money out of this, and they're expanding to a new frontier, or at least expanding that fan base that's already existing in Brazil. And I think that's really all they cared about. But I talked to Jaden Reed this week, who, as a young kid growing up on the west side of Chicago, like his dad moved them to the suburbs of Naperville out of concern about their safety, right? Kenny Clark, who went to UCLA, who grew up in California and Los Angeles, whose father was in prison for what he would say was wrongfully accused of murder. Like, as I said to both those guys, you guys have seen some stuff in your lifetimes. And Kenny Clark was incredible. Kenny Clark had actually been to Rio about a year and a half ago. And he said, yeah, I drove by some of those areas and said to myself, if you make it out of here, you have my respect, because that can't be easy. Now, that's Kenny Clark saying that. You've got Jaden Reed saying, I see these buildings on TV of Brazil, and I think that's what it looked like for me growing up on Chicago's west side. So, again, there are great things about Sao Paulo, right? It is a cultural hub in Brazil. How much have you heard about that at this point? I haven't, because the focus is on the crime rate and everything else, and you have players who are either not completely informed or know just enough to be like, I really like Josh Jacobs. Every interaction I've had with him so far has been very positive. I don't blame Josh Jacobs for a couple of months ago having his facts wrong about wearing green or not wearing green and the gangs and everything else that he talked about. Again, the NFL did not do a great job of educating its players that are going to this game about the pros and cons and the good and the bad and all those other things that go with this trip. And to me, that falls on Roger Goodell and the National Football League.
Yeah, I think that's really well said by you, and great insight into the Packers locker room and some of the conversations you've had this week. Let's go to the football side, Jason, because 2 years ago when the Packers went to London, Matt LaFleur was visibly and openly not very happy about that game, which ultimately wound up in a loss and a broken thumb for the quarterback at the time, Aaron Rodgers. How has Matt LaFleur evolved when it comes to international travel? Because I did see an interaction between you two this week when you asked him, hey, what are you guys doing on Thursday? And he responded with, I have a plan and I feel confident. So, yeah, super vocal from the head coach.
So he does some commercials up here for Bell and Health.
Yeah.
And they're really well written, and he does a really good job. Like, he's a good actor.
Actor.
Right? There was the one where he is pretending to be like a teenager, and he's got his hat on backwards. Like, it's really funny. There's another one where he's directing the band instead of coaching the football team. It's really funny. Like, yeah. And I told him that. I said, you did really well. Like, I used to give Mike McCarthy grief, challenge, for his commercials for Cellcom. So Matt LaFleur, really good actor in those commercials. Matt LaFleur, when it comes to international games, terrible actor, horrible. Like, think of the worst actor you can think of, and then that's Matt LaFleur. Because now, has he said the words out loud that he said with London, where he flat out said he didn't want to go and it's a huge inconvenience and all the negative things? He said no, right? He has not said those, but we all know that's how he still feels. You know, he did not. I did not think he sold it's a great opportunity. Mm-hmm. You know, with the whole world, it's the only game that's going to be on. The whole world will be watching. Parentheses, as long as they have Peacock. He's not. He hates it. He just hates it. Yeah. And frankly, I don't think that's an exclusive thing to Matt LaFleur. I'm guessing Nick Sirianni and his staff don't love it either. But this is part of the deal that you sign up for in the NFL, and he understands that, and he understands, most importantly, I think, that he can't exude the same level of negativity that he did leading up to London. But his players know him. You know, if I'm saying this stuff about him in press conferences, you don't think that they're in team meetings thinking, yeah, he's pissed. He does not want us to have to go.
How are your acting chops?
I think, now, could I win a Tony Award? Maybe. Golden Globe? Possibly. I think they give out those Golden Globes fairly easily.
Yeah, that's fair.
Oscar, probably not.
Okay.
But I think, I've done some work for partners that I think I've gotten some acclaim.
Is there like a community theater background? Because you didn't even hesitate on the opportunity to win a Tony. You made it sound like that was a surefire thing if you were to enter something.
Well, you've never heard me sing, clearly. So no, I love Broadway musical theater. Again, growing up in Milwaukee with parents who, let's just say, were not the most open-minded people on matters of race or sexual orientation. You know, I lived in a house where I must have been gay if I wanted to be in the musical, and I didn't do it, and I regret that because I think I would have really enjoyed it. In addition to playing baseball and all the other things I did as a kid, so it's like Kramer. There's a long old school reference to Seinfeld, and you're too young for it. But he never got to be a banker, and I never got to be on Broadway.
Still some ball game left. I'll just put that out there.
Not that much ball game.
Importance of week one, especially when you're playing a playoff team from a year ago and a likely team that could win their division in the NFC this year. This seems like a really important game for the Green Bay Packers for it being only game one, because it could come up to or down to playoff positioning for the Philadelphia Eagles and the Green Bay Packers, two teams that have high hopes in the NFC. How do you view the importance of this week one for the Packers, maybe versus others, Jason?
Yeah, hugely. And frankly, the one thing that I know Matt LaFleur loves about this game is that it's not in Philadelphia in November, right?
Good point. Yeah.
I mean, they took a home game away from the Eagles. This is why I still can't believe that the NFL strong-armed the Packers into playing in this game. Because if I'm the Eagles, I don't want a game against a fellow NFC playoff contender being at a neutral site 10.5-hour flight away. I want the Packers in Philly with that woman that sits in front of us in the press box, from my memories, banging on the window while I'm trying to cover the game. I don't think that that's something that the Eagles think is fair. And I haven't heard them complain about it, but I think that they would have a beef playing the Cleveland Browns, who wanted to go. Great. It still counts in the standings, but it's not a conference game, so it doesn't affect tiebreakers as much. So I think that's a great thing for the Packers. Look, I think both these teams are playoff teams. I'm really intrigued by Philly because they got a ton of talent, and obviously they were the polar opposite of the Packers last year. Started out great, their quarterback was playing great, and then they faded down the stretch. They've got new coordinators on both sides of the ball. Like, I don't know really what to expect from them, and I think it's going to be really interesting, but they got a hell of a lot of talent. So do the Packers. I think they're both playoff teams. So this very well could be what determines where somebody's ranked in the playoff picture come the end of the season.
So it's a good point by you, and something I hadn't thought of. You mentioned Philly kind of fading down the stretch. They started 10-1. It was a team that didn't end up winning the NFC East. Ultimately, Dallas did, and we know how that happened for the Packers. But Philly then taking a first-round bounce in the postseason. The Packers, as I just mentioned, going on the road to Dallas, winning, and having the eventual champion 49ers on the rope. So who do you view this game more important for? Philadelphia, who has a lot to prove after faltering down the stretch last year? Or is it, hey, what you saw down the stretch from Green Bay wasn't a fluke? Who do you view this game more important for in week one?
It's not important. It's not important for either one. And here's why. Because you could play like absolute garbage in the opener against an NFC opponent, and you can still be the number one seed. That's what we learned from 2021, right? The Packers, again, at a neutral site because of a hurricane, go to Jacksonville, Florida. They just are coming off an NFC championship game loss in which they should have won at home. I know it was COVID. I know there was only a couple thousand people there, but Tom Brady throws 3 picks. They should have been in the Super Bowl. Instead, they weren't. They come back in 2021, and they get their asses whipped by the New Orleans Saints in Jacksonville, 38-3. Does anybody even think about that game anymore, except for when I bring it up for this exact reason? No, because they go on to finish, 13-4 that year? They're the number one overall seed in the NFC. They have a first round bye, which they completely squander against the 49ers. But it didn't matter in the end. And so is this game important? Of course it is. Of course you want to win it. Of course it has those tiebreaker factors and everything else. But it's still counts as only one of 17. It's just the first one. So we dump so much more into that bucket when in reality, like, let's look at last year. Let's look at the flip side.
Sure.
They go to Chicago, and who we had, been so negative toward during the State of the Packers at Summerfest, you're thinking, woohoo, Wilde and Gabe are wrong, go Pack, go, and you're all excited. And then they win one of their next 6 games after that. And what did that mean as it turned out? Not a whole hell of a lot either. It's just a long season that, again, I know I say this all the time, but I just feel like I'm always the guy putting his thumb on the scale of when everyone's riding a little too high, I want to push down a little bit so they level out. And if everyone's way too low, I'm again pushing on the scale to level things out. It's important. You want to win this. It's better than like losing, man, but it's not the end of the world if they don't win it.
It's better than like losing, man. Yeah, that's a fair point. I would make the argument, though, this is a different Packers team than either of the examples you pointed out. Last year, it was a team with low expectations. And yes, they started 2-5, and it was very depressing for me as a Packers fan. But we saw what they were made of in the second half of the season. I think tomorrow serves as the opportunity to say, hey, what we saw last year wasn't a fluke. And even if they look like dog crap and they come out flat on both sides of the ball and they lose by 3 touchdowns, you're right. In the grand scheme of things, it might not matter. But I think to validate that this Packers team wasn't a fluke a year ago seems more important to me this year in week 1 than it has in past years. Because you're right. They came out flat back-to-back years. You mentioned the New Orleans game in Jacksonville and then the Minnesota game. You're giving me a look. Go ahead.
Validate to who? You?
Yeah, I need to be validated, Jason.
Well, what the hell do they care what you think?
Like, they should. I'm a genius.
No, I mean, I'm not sure that's you are a prodigy. You're very talented.
A prodigy.
But yeah, you're a young guy who's come a long way very quickly and had a great career at the Denmark News Tribune or whatever that newspaper was. And
2 episodes in, you're hitting at a 1,000% clip on referencing the Denmark News. Yeah,
that's what I'm here for. But they don't give a damn about what you think. They have high expectations. There's no doubt about it. I was talking to Christian Watson this week, and he said, for all the stuff that you guys are saying, the talk is even greater inside the building. Like, we know how good we can be. So are they going to be pissed if they lose this game? Sure, absolutely they are. Are they going to be devastated and think, oh, my God, we're not as good as we thought we were? No, I don't think that's what's going to happen. Now, first of all, I don't think they're going to go down there and play poorly. They may lose a game, 31-28. Again, I don't know what to expect from this defense. That's one of the things that I'm sure you want to get to. I don't know what to like. I think they're going to be good defensively. I know that they have buy-in, which they didn't have the last 3 years, but I don't know that for sure. But I don't think that their confidence in their team is going to be shaken. I also think that they are still a bunch of young guys who, they're still going to listen to their coaches, right? They're not at the point where like Rodgers and those veteran guys were that thought, well, we know better than the coaches might, right? So I think they're going to, even if they lose, I don't see them splintering. Love's personality is so even keeled, and his guys genuinely feel like he cares about them. It's one of those things I always talk about in coaching, the old saying about that the kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. I think his teammates really know how much he cares. And so, yeah, they may lose this game, but I don't think there's a scenario, barring a major injury to someone who's really important to what they do, where they're going to be devastated if they lose. And I don't think they're going to lose. I think they're going to win this game and get off to a 1-0 start. But I don't think they give a damn about whether they validate what they did last season. I think Matt LaFleur has done a great job of saying, no one cares what you guys did during the second half of last season. And by the way, you didn't win the Super Bowl. So let's not walk around here like we've arrived. We went 9-8, and we had an opportunity in San Francisco and we squandered it. So they have a hell of a lot still to prove. But you're right. They do not have the luxury of no one expects anything out of us, so we can trot out a rookie kicker and it won't. Well, wait, we're doing that anyway. You know what I mean? Like, it's just to me, that's the reality of this team. They're in a different place, but I don't think that they're at a point where they would hit the panic button if this does not go well on Friday night.
We got about 10 minutes left. Let's get into 4 downs, 4 quick questions for Jason Wilde ahead of the Packers opener tomorrow and the NFL opener tonight between the Chiefs and the Ravens. We're going to start there, Jason, for first down. The Chiefs become the 8th team in the Super Bowl era to win back-to-back Super Bowls, chasing that elusive 3rd title. No team has ever won 3 Super Bowls in a row. I'm just going to ask you this simply. You like the Chiefs or the field in 2024's NFL season?
I like the field. I just think it's so hard. I think they've done a fantastic job. Like, have they been to 4 straight Super Bowls?
No, they missed out on the Rams and Bengals here.
The Bengals one. Yeah. Okay. But they've won 3 of the last 4. And look, Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and what they've accomplished, they've done it every which way, right? Like, they did it on the strength of their defense last year. Like, they really have it going, and for as long as they can keep that, I'm not saying they're not a competitor, but I think it's really, really hard to do what they're trying to do, and things have to go your way. They could be, I won't be surprised if they're in the Super Bowl. I won't be surprised if they're in the AFC Championship game, but if you give me the field, I'm taking the field.
Yeah, I'm probably with you, but it's really hard to pick against Andy Reid. You mentioned it. They've won, I think, 3 of the last 4, been in 4 of the last 5 Super Bowls, and win last year's in overtime over the Niners, looking to become the first team in the Super Bowl era to win 3 in a row. Second down, you mentioned the defense just a minute ago, Jason. I do want to get there. Give me one word to describe the Jeff Hafley era thus far. I know he hasn't actually coached a regular season game yet, so that's why I want to do this here. Describe one word to describe the Jeff Hafley era thus far.
Curious.
And go ahead and elaborate.
I'm very eager to see this because I feel like I don't feel like I was never on board with Joe Barry, right? I mean, you can go back into the archives and hear me say you hired a guy with these statistics from his previous stops as a defensive coordinator. I don't get this hire at all. I was a Jero Evero guy who turned out to be a pretty darn good coordinator, and obviously the Panthers didn't want to let him out of their building, even when they changed head coaches. I'm curious because I think their approach, their play style, their mentality, their scheme is an upgrade. I think it's the kind of way you have to play in today's NFL. It is going to lead to you getting gashed on occasion, I think. But I think that they've got the right formula. But until we see evidence of it on the field, I can't make too big a statements on it.
So it's hard to put a ton of stock into preseason games, especially when the majority of your starters don't play in the preseason, or at least extensive snaps. What we saw from the Hafley defense was pretty vanilla. That's fair to say, correct?
Yeah, I think he said for the one game that he had 3 calls on his call sheet.
Wow.
So that's like not even vanilla. That's like
water. That's less than vanilla.
Sparkling water, not even sparkling, flat water.
Flat water, yeah. Flat tap water is what we saw from the Hafley defense in the preseason. He used the term "let it rip." That just seems like such a LaFleur guy to use the term "let it rip" when it comes to Week 1. So no, I'm with you. I'm incredibly curious to see what it is, but it's cool to see the way the players have bought in because it never really felt that way with Joe Barry.
That to me is one of the biggest reasons why I'm as bullish on it, is because when you get guys that truly believe in the system, like Mike Pettine's defenses weren't always great. I still think he would have never left had Matt LaFleur taken some responsibility for the way the 2020 season ended instead of kind of throwing Mike Pettine under the bus. But that was never a good matchup in terms of personalities. He inherited him from McCarthy, etc. But they bought in with Pettin, and one of the things that I remember the guys talking about was we had some reservations about what we were doing, and we went to Mike Pettin, and he listened to us. I think Joe Barry gave the impression that he was listening, and then he didn't do anything differently when the players talked to him. And I think Jair Alexander is the perfect example. Like, I think Jair, with not only Hafley but the staff, seems like a different guy. And I know that's easy to say, and we'll have to wait and see if he runs into some adversity himself. But he was clearly a malcontent previously, and he clearly is not right now. Now, could he revert to malcontent? Sure, but Hafley's a former DB's coach. They had 7 interceptions last season as a team. Rudy Ford led them in interceptions with 2, and nobody loves Rudy more than me. They have to take the ball away more. This vision and break coverage style that they're going to have, which is more of a zone scheme, is going to be more effective for that. I think this system is going to work, and I will be back on whatever we have renamed this show in week 9 or 10 if their defense is playing like garbage, and admit that I was wrong, but I don't think I'll have to.
Weekly Wilde, week 9 or 10. Got it. Third down for you, Jason. Something I think we haven't spent a ton of time on leading into week 1, but this Packers team is mostly healthy. They completely overhauled their strength and conditioning staff in the offseason. This is a team that is entering week 1 pretty much fully healthy outside of maybe Marshawn Lloyd, the 3rd-round running back pick. Does the strength and conditioning staff deserve credit for this? Are the Packers lucky just because they didn't play a ton of starters in the preseason? But a clean bill of health entering the start of the league year is a good sign at the very least.
Yes. I mean, I think it's both, right? Like, let's not undermine the strength and conditioning staff by saying that they had no impact whatsoever, right? There is clearly, I'm not going to practices now because it's hard to get there when Wilde and Tausch ends, but we don't get to watch more than just stretch and a little bit of drill work anyway at this point. But the stretching is different. It takes longer. They do more stuff. They do different things for different position groups. So that is a change. So I'm not going to undermine them by saying, well, that doesn't make any difference. That said, there's also luck involved, right? Like, I always use this example. The 2014 team was the first year Mike McCarthy instituted, what Tausch likes to call Foot Bath Friday, where instead of practicing, they got massages and they did yoga and all this other stuff and pedicures. And they were the healthiest they've ever been. Right? Their offensive line, Bulaga was the one lineman that missed 1 game all year. But that's also good fortune, right? That's also, a running back getting hit and him falling one direction when he gets hit instead of falling the other direction and rolling up on your knee and tearing your ACL. And so it is both. I don't think that the strength and conditioning staff was this panacea of a change that solved everything. But it would appear that it has helped. I will say this: the most important guy that's healthy is Christian Watson. 100%. Like, obviously, you want your quarterback to be healthy. And McKinney and there's a lot of guys you want to have healthy and in your lineup. But, the fact that Christian Watson went down to Madison and saw Dr. Brian Haderscheit at the Badger Athletic Performance Group at UW and seems, again, knock on wood for Christian, seems to have resolved that hamstring asymmetry. He did not miss a practice all camp. Now, there were a couple of moments where we thought maybe he was, dead. And family night where he had that collision with Evan Williams and came off, right? But he did not miss a single practice. He is healthy and ready to go. And I think that just gives their offense such a different dimension. I mean, even when he was playing in the 2 playoff games, he only played 60 snaps in those 2 games. He caught 2 passes on 3 targets for 20 yards. But you're telling me that him being on the field and people having to worry about him going over the top on him wasn't a factor in their offensive success? I'm sorry. Him just being on the field makes a difference.
You're 100% right. Really good point by you on Christian Watson. Full go in week 1 against the Philadelphia Eagles. We will save all yes or no with Jason Wilde questions for the 5 o'clock hour Central Time of Green Bay Game Day on Friday on ESPN Milwaukee. But I will steal the final question for fourth down from the Green and Gold game preview on Wilde and Tausch, which is simply this, Jason. You made the prediction already without me having to ask you. You think the Packers are going to win, but I will ask you this. The Packers will win in week 1 if.
Did we skip a down?
No, we've done
Did we
first,
do all
second,
four?
third. Yeah.
Wow. Time just flies by when I'm spending time with you.
Adorable. Just adorable.
Yeah, that's exactly the word I use to describe you. Look, I think they win if their defense is a close approximation to what we expect it to be. Because let's not, we're so Packers centric, and I'm as guilty of this as anybody. Philadelphia's got a hell of a lot of talent on their football team. Now, I don't know, they've got a really good left tackle. Obviously, they've got a really good right tackle. They've got a good offensive line, but how different is it without Kelsey at center? I don't know. I'm not sure they know either. Like, is the brotherly shove going to be as effective without Jason Kelsey, right? And so I am curious about that aspect of the Eagles, but they have Saquon Barkley in their running in their backfield now. I don't care about how Jalen Hurts may have scuffled down the stretch last year. He was an MVP candidate the previous year, finished second in the MVP balloting, right? They have tons of wide receiver and tight end talent, just like the Packers, except theirs is a little more proven at this point in their careers. So I think they win the game if the defense can, what's the old Chris Berman-ism? You can't stop them. You can only hope to contain them. If they contain that offense effectively, then I think the Packers win the game.
What? That's the old Chris Bermanism, right?
Back.
Very good. Very good. Packers, Eagles, 7:15 on Peacock or in your local markets in Green Bay and Milwaukee on Friday to kick off the NFL season. That is the 3-time Wisconsin Sportswriter of the Year, Jason Wilde. You can hear him each and every weekday from 9 to noon on Wilde and Tausch with Packers Hall of Famer Mark Tauscher. Football season's here. Summer's over, Jason. Appreciate the time and the insight as always, my friend.
I am looking forward to next week's show, which will have a new football term related title to it.
I'm gonna let you take the lead on that.
Okay.
And
it'll be whatever it is. No, 2-minute drill or whatever. It won't be that, but it'll be some sort of football term with Alex Strouf and Jason Wilde. That's what it's going to be called next week. So be prepared. Otherwise, I'm just not coming.
All right, you have your people talk to my people. Weekly Wilde returns next Thursday at noon on the ESPN Milwaukee YouTube channel. You can also find it the Jason Wilde, Green and Gold Fix, and Mr. Irrelevant podcast feeds wherever you get your podcast each Thursday at noon. Weekly Wilde with Jason Wilde, episode 2 comes to a wrap. Thanks, Jason.
You don't even get to take care. Be good.